I find myself compelled to recount a tale most dreadful a narrative that even now causes my hand to tremble as I set quill to parchment. Let it be known that I, a man of science and skepticism, have been brought to the very brink of madness by events that defy all rational explanation. It began, as such horrors often do, with the faintest of whispers, a sound so slight, so ephemeral, that at first I dismissed it as nothing more than the product of an overactive imagination. Yet as the days turned to weeks and weeks to months, the whisper grew not in volume, but in persistence. It haunted me, this barely audible susurration, like the rustling of dead leaves in an autumn graveyard. My abode, a decrepit mansion inherited from a distant relative whose name I dare not speak, seemed to harbor this insidious sound within its very walls. The house, with its sagging timbers and peeling wallpaper, had always exuded an air of melancholy. But now it felt alive, pulsing with a malevolent energy that set my nerves alight with dread. I recall with perfect clarity the night when the whisper became unmistakable. As I sat in my study, poring over ancient tomes in a futile attempt to distract my troubled mind, the sound suddenly crystallized. No longer a formless murmur, it now carried the unmistakable cadence of human speech. Yet the words, if words they were, remained tantalizingly beyond my comprehension. Driven by a morbid curiosity that I now recognize as the first stirrings of obsession, I pressed my ear against the wall. The chill of the plaster sent shivers down my spine. But it was nothing compared to the icy tendrils of fear that gripped my heart as the whisper grew clearer still. It seemed to emanate from within the very structure of the house, as though the bricks and mortar themselves were conspiring to drive me to the brink of sanity. Night after night, I found myself drawn to that accursed wall, straining to decipher the cryptic utterances that seemed to mock my every attempt at understanding. Sleep eluded me, for even in my dreams I was pursued by that insidious whisper. Ow! My waking hours became a blur of feverish research and increasingly desperate attempts to rationalize the inexplicable. As my grip on reality began to slip, I turned to more extreme measures. With trembling hands, I tore at the wallpaper, my fingernails splitting and bleeding as I clawed at the ancient plaster beneath. I was consumed by a maniacal desire to uncover the source of my torment, to expose the hidden speaker to the harsh light of day. But what I found behind the wall defied all reason and sanity. Where I had expected to find rotting wood, or perhaps the nest of some vermin, I instead discovered a yawning void of darkness so profound that it seemed to devour the very light of my lantern. And from this abyssal maw, the whisper emerged, no longer content to remain a mere background noise. It spoke to me then, in tones that dripped with malice and ancient evil. The words, now crystal clear, filled me with a terror so profound that I felt my very soul quail before it. "You have heard me for so long," it said, its voice a sibilant hiss that seemed to coil around my mind like a venomous serpent. "Now, at last, you shall see." And see I did, dear reader. Oh, how I wish I could unsee the horrors that emerged from that eldritch darkness. The walls of my ancestral home began to writhe and pulse, as though some monstrous entity sought to break free from its centuries-long imprisonment. Shapes formed in the shadow shapes that defied the laws of nature and geometry, twisting and contorting in ways that no earthly creature could. I watched, paralyzed with fear, as tendrils of living darkness reached out from the void, caressing my face with a touch colder than the grave. The whisper had become a cacophony of voices, each one promising revelations too terrible to contemplate. They spoke of ancient pacts and forbidden knowledge, of sacrifices made in the name of powers beyond mortal comprehension. In that moment of ultimate horror, I understood the true nature of my inheritance. This house, this accursed dwelling, was not merely a structure of wood and stone, was a gateway, a portal to realms uncharted by human minds. And I, in my foolish curiosity, had become the key to unlocking its terrible secrets. As the darkness surged forth, threatening to engulf me entirely, I made a desperate bid for escape. With strength born of sheer terror, I tore myself away from the grasping tendrils and fled my chamber. Through winding corridors I ran, the whispers pursuing me, growing louder with each step. The very foundations of the house seemed to shift and warp, staircases twisting into impossible configurations as I sought desperately for an exit. At last I burst forth into the cold night air, my lungs burning as I gulped down great breaths of freedom. But even as I staggered away from that hellish abode, I knew in my heart that I could never truly escape. The whispers had taken root in my mind, a cancer of the soul that would forever haunt my waking moments and poison my dreams. Now, as I pen these words in a room far from that accursed house, I can still hear them faint, but ever present. They call to me, promising answers to questions I dare not ask. And in the darkest hours of the night, when the veil between worlds grows thin, I sometimes catch glimpses of shapes moving in the shadows of my new dwelling. I leave this account as a warning to those who would seek to uncover the secrets hidden in the silent places of the world. There are mysteries best left unexplored, truths too terrible for mortal minds to comprehend. For in the whispers that echo through forgotten corridors and abandoned rooms, there lurks a horror beyond imagination. Heed my words, dear reader, and pray that you never hear the whisper in the wall. For once it speaks to you, there can be no escape from the darkness that follows. The walls have ears indeed, and sometimes they have so much more. May God have mercy on my soul, for I fear that nothing else can save me now from the horrors I have unleashed.